yesterday I put out my top 10 best movies of 2025. Today is the list that's a lot more fun to talk about, the top 10 worst movies of 2025. What's up, you guys? It's Jonathan Carter, the movie critic that watches bad movies so you don't have to. And today we are going through the absolute worst movies of 2025. If you're up for the challenge, put your worst movies in the comments. Top 10, top 5, top 3, whatever you're feeling. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on TikTok, Instagram for shorter versions of reviews, and Spotify for podcast versions of these reviews. Little bit of a disclaimer, just like my top 10 best movies of 2025, this is not a full review of these movies. They're just quick thoughts on it. I do have reviews, I think, of all of these films on my channel, so go check them out if you'd like. With that being said, let's jump into this list with number 10. Funny enough, this studio made it onto the worst of 2025 and also the best of 2025, Marvel's Captain America: Brave New World. This is just like a complete Frankenstein of a film, and I'm a big fan of the Sam Wilson character. I just don't think they put him in a movie that did him any favors, really. It's just like you can feel Marvel's like the worst days of the multiverse saga, like the beginning of phase 4 and phase 5 and all that, like kind of creeping into them wanting to actually make better films. And so they, just like Daredevil Born Again, they made this project that is just not one seamless, cohesive story, and you can really feel that. This is just like I said, a Frankenstein type of film, and to me, it's no wonder that they're relying on Steve Rogers coming back from Doomsday. I wish that they would give Sam Wilson his spotlight, but they just really fumbled that on all fronts. Number 9, I'm a big enough fan of the two leading actors in this movie, and so I was hoping I'd find something enjoyable in it, but I really didn't. Together. Like I said, Dave Franco and Alison Brie are great actors. I really love them. They're a great couple on screen. They're a great couple like in real life. They're just so lovable and enjoyable watching them. But Together just felt so... It's completely forgettable with this really interesting premise of what would you do if you were like literally physically attached to your partner, or you know, whoever you drink this like weird water drink with, and it just kind of meanders through a story where it doesn't really use its potential or its premise to its fullest potential. 8. This will not be the only movie on this list that should not have been made and should have just stuck to the animated original, How to Train Your Dragon. This is essentially a carbon copy of the original cartoon, just brought to, you know, real life, and it's even the same director, writer, all that. Like, it is a side-by-side remake, but the magic of it is just gone, and I can't help but ask, why make this movie? If you're gonna watch a How to Train Your Dragon film, just watch the original cartoon animated film. It's much better. 7. This movie actually just made me want to go back and watch the original and then the follow-up sequel to that, Tron: Ares. Jared Leto has such a weird career in Hollywood. This is a sequel to Tron Legacy, and yes, the original Tron film, but it's like a quasi semi-sequel where it takes a movie that had a solid premise of a sequel ready to go and just completely ignores that and makes it a vehicle, literally and figuratively, for Jared Leto. And it's missing the Daft Punk soundtrack, it's missing the amazing visuals of Tron Legacy, and it just ends up coming up empty, and like we gotta get Jared Leto out of Hollywood, y'all. I don't know how he has a career at this point. Fun fact, this actually opened to worse numbers than Morbius. 6. The Woman in the Yard. It is a woman in a yard that haunts you. That is literally the entire premise of this movie. Doesn't really do anything inventive with that. I saw the trailer and I was like, oh, that actually looks kind of interesting. It looks a little freaky. Nah, not really much going on there. And it is really difficult to talk about because there isn't, besides the name of this movie, there really isn't much else in it. And that's why it lands on the list of worst movies of 2025. 5. This is a movie that I don't really know much of its history of other films that came out in the 90s. I Know What You Did Last Summer, and in all honesty, I wish that I was watching a better movie last summer when this, or in the summer when this came out. This to me, I feel like I Know What You Did last summer, the original, was just like was created to just ride the wave of Scream films, and I feel like that's what this one is also trying to do now that the Scream movies have had a bit of a resurgence. Especially with Scream 7 coming out next year, which I really, really hope is good. But this movie just felt completely lifeless. And as somebody that doesn't, like I said, know anything about the previous movies, there was nothing really to sink my teeth into here. And it just ended up feeling like just really, really cheap. And like I was honestly just really bored watching it. There's really nothing that stands out, even in the matter of the way the killer attacks people or the way that the satire was written or anything like that. It's just really, like I said, is a movie, I guess. 4, another series that I don't really have any like love or reason in the lore to enjoy. I was not a fan of the original. I'm not a fan of this one, and that is Five Nights at Freddy's 2. This just feels like they had to make this movie because maybe the studio had a deal to make 2 films. I think the first one did do really well. I was not a fan of that original movie at all. That also made it on my worst list of 2023, I believe. This one is actually somehow worse in every single category, and both of these films, the Five Nights at Freddy's and the sequel, just have so many plot holes in them. And it's like, if you stop to think about, besides the premise of it, like I can just look past that because it is, you know, some magical horror movie or whatever, but just the way that the stories are written, like it doesn't make any sense when you even just stop for a second to think of like, how exactly would this character get there? Why is this character being possessed by this villain? What essentially is going on? But these movies do make a lot of money. It's always great to see Josh Hutcherson on screen, and I think the Five Nights at Freddy's fans really do enjoy these films, so good on ya, I guess. 3. Horror had a really good year this year and also a really bad year, as we're seeing here. The Monkey. I'm kind of over this Osgood Perkins hype train. Longlegs, like, to me, seemed really interesting and ended up being really bad. The Monkey, I shouldn't say really bad, it was fine, but The Monkey I had no interest in seeing, and just from the trailers I was like, this looks really dumb. But I try to go into things with an open mind, and surprise, surprise, this movie was really dumb. Completely uninventive, unimaginative horror that seems like Osgood Perkins is just trying to write and direct movies like as quickly as he can with no space or breath in between, and it just really showed with this one that I was like, again, what is going on here? 2, I talked about earlier a movie that shouldn't have been made from an animated film into a live action, and here we are at the next one, Snow White. I actually forgot that this movie came out this year. When I was going through my list of all the movies that I saw, I was like, oh yeah, that abomination of a film actually released this year, and it just was like, this to me, for a massive studio like Disney that can turn out really incredible animated or live action films when they want to, this was just the most lifeless, soulless version of one of these kinds of films that I think people are just incredibly over these live action Disney movies. I thought it was fine with The Lion King. That movie made $1 billion back in 2019. I also wasn't against the Little Mermaid live action remake, but like at this point, why are we doing it? Like, can we just either come up with something new or leave these animated classics alone? Because majority of the time, they're always better. And this movie is just like the quintessential like film of that. Like, stop making these live action films, Disney, please. Number 1, coming in as the worst movie of 2025, just a completely forgettable one-note film, Clown in a Cornfield. Again, like I said, really not a good year for horror. Well, actually, we had some great horror movies this year, and we had some really bad ones, pretty evident in this list. Clown in a Cornfield is essentially this cult of a town haunting people dressed up as clowns because they want to keep the town white or conservative or boomers or whatever it was. And the movie tried to have, like I said, tap into political themes in its film, but never really went below surface level of that. And it just, the kills were unimaginative, the writing, the dialogue was so cliche and cheesy and just like pain cringe-worthy at times that this movie actually, and none of these movies on this list can even fall into the so bad that it's good. Like this movie had absolutely no redeeming qualities to it. I know that sounds really harsh, but it was just a really not great time at the theaters, and kind of why this list exists is for movies like this to be on it. So there's my list of top 10 worst movies of 2025. Like I said, if you're up for the challenge, put your worst list or worst movies of 2025 in the comments. Top 10, top 5, top 3. Please be sure to like and subscribe, you guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Check out reviews of these movies. I have, I think, all of them reviewed on this channel for a more deep dive into the films. And as always, I will see you guys on the next one.